Outstanding. Chris Moon, you are finally here. This is taking a wee bit of time to set up, but I'm just so chuffed that you're here. How the devil are you?
Oh, living the dream, mate. Living the dream. How are you?
Fine. Well, I say that this is going to sound really, it's going to sound really daft, and I'm gutted that I'm one of the sort of I'm one of the not victims, but I had the AstraZeneca jab a week ago last Sunday, and it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
So I felt crap all week, massive indigestion, acid reflux, just horrible. I was getting into this little swing of drinking about 3 or 4 liters of water a day. Couldn't touch water. It was just horrendous. But I'm coming out of it now, feeling a lot better. Sounds a bit wimpy, but I'm getting over it.
Not at all. Look, first and foremost, we have to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to be gentle on ourselves, and there are times when we need to just take it easy, recharge the batteries, because actually, if you run them down, it takes a long time to recharge. So it's better to not get in that place in the first place. I think managing our health is really, really important.
Second to none. Yeah, undoubtedly. So, so we've got a common friend, Alan Dowie, to thank for this little meeting and this little engagement, which has been lovely so far. So thank you to Alan for setting it up. We'll mention him in dispatches. So many people will know you with your, very well connected chap, very well networked chap. People might know you for your keynote addresses, for your after dinner work. People might know you from your book. People might know you from your numerous TV and internet interview experiences and all of that. Or people might just know you as Chris, or that bloke that's always out running and looking at flowers and doing all that nice stuff. I guess just for people who don't know you as one of those things or something else, do you want to just, and this might be a good thing to do, because it might actually set the scene for all those sliding doors in your life that led you to this point that you're at today. So for work, and we were just having a bit of a chat about some of the things that you're doing for work. What is it you do these days for work?
I am a keynote speaker, and I run workshops and programs to improve individual and team performance. And there are 3 aspects to what I do. I've got lots of experience on the balance of life and death and on the limit of human endurance. I'm genuinely one of the luckiest people alive you're likely to meet. And I walk the talk when it comes to challenging the concept of limitation. I became the world's first amputee ultra-distance runner. So I've got lots of experiences that I can use to illustrate principles and truths that will help people do what they do better. The angle is I did my master's in human behavior. I work a lot with scientists, psychiatrists, business schools, rigor to the I share, but I just give illustrations of real experience so people can get the emotional context. I've had the good fortune to be a speaker in the last year online, a few face-to-faces actually, socially distanced for essential training around well-being, mental health, and health and safety. So I've had the good fortune to work with many, many organizations and different groups of people. And it's all about them. They are the stars of my show. It's about helping them improve their individual and team performance.
Wow. In a nutshell, that's the elevator speech right there.
Yes, but we couldn't be in an elevator right now because it's one time in an elevator, mate.
Exactly. Maybe a silly question. You've been doing this for so long and worked with such amazing companies and groups of people. That individual and team performance thing, is it all nuanced and specific, or are there any common themes that you've seen over the years that you've been doing this?
There are common themes. Firstly, Eric, there's no such thing as a bad question, merely a bad answer. This is a good question. And yes, there are common themes. I think what I've noticed is that organizations that have trust are by far and away the most successful and the most receptive to performance improvement, even though they will be performing really well.
Right.
Where we don't have trust, where people are uncertain, where there are dark emotional clouds hanging, where there's concern and fear, then yeah, they're tough places. And so yes, that's probably the most obvious and simple answer.
Well, right. Let's get in the old H.G. Wells time machine and go a bit back in time. So, um, growing up, I guess you went to school. Was it Salisbury you went to school?
Yeah, I grew
So
up in.
was that where you grew up?
Yeah, I was born in a little village in a farmhouse, born at home, and lovely place. And I grew up there, south of England in Wiltshire. It was like living 40 years behind the times in the village where I grew up. My family originally from Scotland, so
Right.
I guess I moved here many years later, and it felt like coming home as well.
Right.
Nice part of the world, good people, but I guess if you look for good people, you'll always find them.
Oh, totally, absolutely. What a beautiful thing to say. So, from school time, you went on to do some work in at college now, Plymouth Facility of Agriculture and Environment, the HND in agriculture. What was that just from the environment? Was that?
Yeah. My family were farmers or soldiers, farmers or fighters, and so I grew up on a farm, and it is in the blood. You know,
Right.
random fact here, Eric. The only social group that intermarries in the United Kingdom is farming. You know, because it is an unusual and massive commitment. It is a way of life. And, you know, if you think about it, I was milking cows 7 days a week. You have to be there twice a day to milk cows. And it is very unusual compared to most modern occupations. But I love farming. I have a very close connection with the land and with nature. And I grew up with that. And I feel very privileged to have had that upbringing. And of course, I ended up wanting to be back with trees and in the countryside because that's what I grew up with. But there was no land or money in my bit of the family. So I had to work hard. So from the age of 15, I used to work before I went to school in the morning. I worked every weekend, every holiday. By the time I was 21, I'd achieved my life's ambition. I was in a farming partnership. The guy that I worked with, he had the most amazing attitude to work. He said, look, you know, we're here 7 days a week. We work incredibly hard compared to most people. In the summer, we get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd finish at 11 at night when we were silaging. You'd think nothing of it. You'd just get your 5 hours sleep, and you'd wake up 5 hours later. You'd only been asleep for about minutes. And then you get up and you do it again. But so, yes, it is a lovely way of life. But economically, you know, farming is becoming tougher and tougher. Yeah. And of course, many of the family farms have gone. We're losing, I think, one a week at the moment. And yes, economically, farming is tough. And of course, the return on capital, if you buy your land, I think it's about less than 1%. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily stand up as a business proposition. But it was my life, my family. I spent a lot of time with my cousins and my uncle when I was a child growing up on their farm as well. So I kind of knew nothing else. And I loved it. And you know, my business partner was an amazing guy. He'd started in the 1930s when he left school at 15, then got a small tenancy. He milked cows. He worked incredibly hard. You know, I've never seen anybody work like him physically. And I got involved in the mid 1980s. And this was the sort of last area of really kind of muscle power. Yeah. That, you know, you had to be able to work hard to leap on and off the tractors, to stack bales, to milk the cows. And of course, now farm work is much more automated. Yeah. And the machines are much bigger. But it was a lovely period of life. And unfortunately, there was just one bit of the philosophy to work that my business partner missed, and that was looking after his long-term health. He had worked so hard that he'd worn out his joints by the time he was in his mid-50s. He had the heart of a lion. He was not for quitting. No. And I worried about this for months and months. And then one day I just realized, I said to him, look, I should go and do something else. It's also, I went to agriculture college. I understood agriculture. So I guess education was a good thing for me. Yeah. And there's something called the treadmill theory. And it explains the challenge that farmers face. And it's very simple. Every scientific advance in agriculture, whether it's animal husbandry, whether it's protection with chemicals, whether it's improved nutrition, all of that means that more product is. All the time, agriculture is becoming more and more efficient. And then if we apply the rule of supply and demand, what that means is there's more and more product out there. Therefore, in real terms, the price is going to drop. There's so much of it. But at the same time, the only way the poor old farmer is going to increase their income is by producing more. And so therefore, they're on a treadmill. The faster they run, the faster they have to run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And it's desperate. You can feel the tension involved in that and the ever decreasing circles. Yeah, awful.
Yeah, and of course the sweet spots are, say, specialist organic growers who are selling to a rich market. But the reality is most people in the United Kingdom need cheap food. You know, there are sadly many people in our society struggling to pay the bills, and what they need is good, cheap, wholesome food. So, you know, modern agriculture definitely has its place. And if people have the wealth and the preference to go for the high-end niche stuff, and if farmers are retailing their own stuff, then good for them. But that's the reality. And so I said to my business partner, look, you know, I should do something else. You should sell up and enjoy your money. Story with a really happy ending. He lived until he was 92. He had a great life. He was happy. And yeah, great. I feel very privileged to have had such a great friend. Second brother, really. And but of course, out of every disadvantage we experience, I've always found, out of every disappointment, out of every letdown, out of every failure, there has always been greater opportunity.
A greater opportunity, of course.
So out of every disappointment I've experienced, out of every failure, out of every disappointment, you know what? There's always been a greater good. There's been a bigger opportunity. So, you know, when we're kids, I don't know if you can remember this, you know, being a guy who's 6'6" and a rugby player, you must have had growing pains.
Oh, yeah.
Your legs will have done a lot of growing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something we need to recognize in our adult lives, that, you know, there will be an element of pain maybe when we grow.
Yeah.
But I guess the difference between an optimist and a pessimist is that an optimist will focus on the opportunities in a time of just focus on the difficulties.
Yeah.
So I'm a realistic optimist, absolutely. And so I wanted to do something humanitarian. And my father fought in the Second War, my grandfather in the First World War. So I was very aware of the military, and it was very much, I guess, part of my upbringing and my identity. So I went to Sandhurst and became an army officer.
Just like that.
Well, obviously, I had to apply. It was very different to farming, and it required me to think differently. Very, very funny, because I'm still in touch with my friends from Sandhurst, and it was a great experience. You know, you made friends for life, but also, you know, I went there. I'd had no military experience at all. I'd done a herd manager's job before I went there, so I was going to Sandhurst taking a 2/3 pay cut. I was earning 3 times more out of the army what I earned when I joined. I definitely didn't join for the money, but I had no military experience, so my learning curve at Sandhurst was very, very steep. My colour sergeant, who I have only become really good friends with, the guy that trained me, the colour sergeant. Firstly, colour sergeants at Sandhurst have a remarkable ability to make the word "sir" like. I don't know how they do that. There must be some sort of training. It was just a really great time. And, you know, I learned a lot. I met some great people, and it was an experience that taught me a lot. Most important thing I learned from Sandhurst: don't take yourself. Don't be the center of your own universe. We've all got to be able to laugh at ourselves, because at the end of the day, we're all a bit ridiculous.
We are a bit ridiculous. Now, you finished off at Sandhurst, and then I'm fascinated by military. I'm fascinated by, you know, anything that's related to the military. But I know nothing about the technicalities of it. So you did your time at Sandhurst, and I guess then you're out in sort of operations and doing things. And I guess there's a moment during this time there's a series of things that, for people who know you and have read the books and seen the interviews, there is a series of things that happened in your life that are kind of like the known bits about Chris, the sort of, you know, oh yes, that's the chap that X, Y, and Z. So was the operational aspects of being out in the field and being an officer walk in the park?
I was much better suited to operations, I think, of doing things for real.
Right.
Because that's my kind of background growing up farming. It's about doing stuff. So that really suited me, and I volunteered to go to Northern Ireland. So I did 3 years on counter-terrorist operations.
Crikey.
And I enjoyed it. I met some really good people. I think it's also important to understand that those conditions are stressful, and you know, we like to think we control things all the time, but we don't. The reality is, some of the times you are dealing with situations that haven't been dealt with before, and you just got to do the best you can.
Crikey, just incredible. So there's you know, for anyone who researches you on the internet, they'll find the famous Khmer Rouge kind of stuff. How did that all come about? When was that? Was that during your time as an officer?
No, I left the British Army.
Right.
I had a wonderful time in the army, but at that point the army was contracting. So it didn't look like there were any conflicts coming up. I'd done 3 years in operations. I wanted to do something for real. And I left.
3 years. So all your 3 years in operations was in Northern Ireland?
Yes.
Right, got you. Okay, makes sense.
And then I came out of the army. I was on the reserve, had a great time on the reserve in the Territorial Army. But I wanted to do something that used both my agricultural background, engineering, and I did my development at agricultural college. So I wanted to combine that and do something really useful. And so I decided to go and work for a charity clearing landmines in Asia and Africa. Fabulous charity called the Halo Trust. Now the biggest landmine clearance charity in the world, a fabulous organization. And I joined in the very early days. I was very good at mine clearance, Eric. I found the very thing we were looking for.
Yes, you did. You're brilliant at finding them.
One over here.
Found one.
Yeah, good. The very thing we're looking for.
The very thing we're looking for. Good job, Chris. So yes, you go and you're doing that. And I'm trying to put this in order. Khmer Rouge.
Okay,
landmine,
1993, I was in Cambodia, and the United Nations were there. When you go to Phnom Penh now, the capital city of Cambodia, it's hard to think it was just only 20 years ago. It hadn't changed for 30 years. And, you know, the Khmer Rouge took power in 1973. 1975, sorry. They ruled Cambodia until 1979, when they were pushed out by Vietnamese invasion. And then there was a civil war that went on for almost 4 years. In 1993, after the Paris Peace Accord, the United Nations had a massive mission to bring peace to Cambodia. And it is still one of the most successful UN peacekeeping operations. They held elections. There was a government. They had a transitional authority. During that period, the Khmer Rouge didn't take part in the elections. They had been pushed back into jungle strongholds. And we were asked by the United Nations to clear landmines in a remote border village, which we did. They said there was no way the Khmer Rouge could get near us, but unfortunately, it happened. No one could predict. The Khmer Rouge sent to the jungle, and I was kidnapped or abducted, I'm not quite sure what the word is. Taken prisoner is the most accurate description, because that's what it was.
Right.
I was taken prisoner, but bear in mind the Khmer Rouge had little or no interaction with us. Right. And I was taken prisoner with 2 Cambodian colleagues. We were held for 3 days. There were 7 times executing us. Fortunately, I persuaded the Khmer Rouge commander not to execute release us and not to put us in prisoner handling system. And he knew that once he put us in prisoner handling system,
Right.
So that for him was a big deal. Many years later, I went back and I became friends with him. I saw he wasn't being indicted for Khmer Rouge waterlands, and as a result of making the decision not to execute, he was seen as ideologically impure. So that meant the Khmer Rouge sent to kill him. Heard about this, and so he defected, and it was one of the biggest defections bringing an end to the fight. Right. But
yeah.
So many years later, I went back and became friends with the Khmer Rouge commander who made the decision not to execute us. And what he said completely astonished me. He said that more people had been brought in front of him than he could remember. And he knew that I was a good person because I wasn't afraid of him, but I was the only person that wasn't afraid of him. And that influenced him, and it made the difference between him releasing us or not.
So that was enough just to make him think just slightly differently, and that thinking time was enough to make him form a conclusion that maybe you were an interesting person that was worth a bit more.
Well, I think I also had a very clear strategy in how I was communicating with them, that I wanted to identify with them and get them to identify in me. And of course, the Khmer Rouge had a philosophy of peasant farming. They were going to create a rice growing dynasty, which of course economically in the 1970s was completely impossible to create your wealth through agriculture alone. But that's the way they saw it, and they were going to create this agricultural society that was going to be a major regional power, and all of the people were turned back to the year's era and made to work on the land. Most of the Khmer Rouge were peasants.
Right.
So it was a communist uprising. It was started by Pol Pot, who was their leader, and it took more than 15 years to come to fruition. But when it did, of course, most of their ranking officers were peasants, and they'd had little education. They were farmers. They were peasant farmers, and they hated the decadence of the West and the wastefulness. If you're a peasant farmer struggling to feed yourself, of course, much of the urban dwelling wealth will appear obscene and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I'd come from a farming background and I could work incredibly hard physically definitely helped me.
My goodness me. My goodness. How were you just released? Were you busted out? How did it work?
After nearly 3 days, he decided he would release us, and we were sent back through the jungle. I was driving my Land Rover, and the Land Rover got stuck. They made bridges by putting big logs under the water and digging them into the banks. So you drove across the logs. So this was an easy way to make a bridge for them, but also it couldn't be seen from the air, and the water flowed underneath the logs, so you couldn't actually see the bridge. And it required a bit of careful driving. And as I was coming across one of those, my Land Rover got stuck. It came off the log, and I managed to somehow winch it out. By the grace of God, I managed to winch my Land Rover out. And of course, again, my farming background and being able to be practical and do that really, really helped, because they wanted the vehicle. And in the end, we were then, after we'd been released, we were attacked by another group of Khmer Rouge in a different faction. They were a highly factional organization.
Right.
So we were released from one area, and then as we were traveling back, we were attacked and taken prisoner by another faction, and then the whole process began again. And that was when it was so important not to give up hope. It would have been so easy to give up. But then I negotiated with the senior Khmer Rouge commander there, who released us.
My goodness me. So then I guess you get out of there, which, you go into much more detail in your book, so it's worth definitely picking up on that. One step beyond, right? When did you get to Mozambique?
I went to Mozambique end of 1994, almost 2 years after I'd been kidnapped or taken prisoner by the Khmer Rouge. So I stayed on in Cambodia, carried on working, running mine clearance teams. And in Mozambique, massive country, I was running a large operation in the north of the country, clearing landmines. And after I'd been there about nearly 5 months, I was walking up a safe lane where all the landmines had been removed. But unfortunately, it wasn't possible for complex technical and behavioral reasons for the deminers to locate one landmine. There was just one they couldn't find. So although I was in the safe area, there was one they couldn't locate. And I stepped on it. And I still remember it all in the present tense because it was so extreme. But looking on the bright side, I always said that if my blokes missed a landmine, I always wanted to be the first to know about it. So on that basis, I have never complained.
Never complained at all. No, not at all. My goodness. There's a statement you make in your you've got a little goals section in your about section on your LinkedIn profile. And it's got some lovely stuff in there. I'll ask people to go and have a look at it. Go onto Chris Moon, MBE's LinkedIn page, and go down to the goals. But there's one right in the middle that says, show why, no matter how bad it gets, we should never assume the role of victim.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very powerful.
Because although it might seem that there is no hope, what happens is when the going gets tough, we slip into the role of victim without even realizing it.
Yeah.
That's the natural default setting. We slip into it. We give up. We become compliant. We see no hope. We learn to be helpless if we don't think we can do anything about it. And so I survived as a prisoner of the Khmer Rouge. And after me, 12 people were taken. Sadly, all of them were executed. You know, what I learned is I survived because I made that decision early on to say, I will never assume the role of victim. Don't be a victim. Look, most of us have so much we take for granted. And whilst it may seem hopeless and pointless, life is truly a gift that we have that we take for granted. And we shouldn't. Yeah. We should just get out there, take pleasure in simple things. And whilst it may seem sometimes our lives are painful, difficult, unfair, and of course, life can be difficult and unfair. And when those things happen to us that we don't think we deserve and there is no hope, well, that's no reason to give up. The great thing is to keep on keeping on and to recognize, actually, maybe it's not what happens to us that's important. It is how we choose to deal with it. An attitude, no matter what happens, is our choice.
So all that said, and as powerful as that is, you're lying in a bed at some point, you've realized what's happened to your body. You must have given yourselves 5 minutes of feeling like a victim. You must have.
No.
Not at all, not even a second.
No, because look, reasons are psychological rocket fuel. I accept, look, we got to take responsibility for ourselves. We might end up in an unfortunate and unhappy situation, but actually no one can deal with that for us. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. So yeah, I didn't expect that to happen to me.
Right.
I don't think, well, I know I didn't screw up. There will always be people who say you did, but I didn't. You know, there's nothing I could do differently. If I was to go down that safety lane again today, without the benefit of hindsight, there's nothing I can do. So let's be honest about this, Eric. Shit happens to all of us. But the important thing is to recognize that and wipe it off before it sticks, because nobody wants to be next to somebody with that stuff stuck to them. So we all need to develop our wiping off mechanisms. And that's what it is. And for me, yeah, sure. My family, my friends said Chris Moon's life is over. You know, his hobbies, running, gardening, motorcycling, but most importantly, he lives for his work clearing landmines, and he can't do that anymore. So it can't be him. So his life's over. Nothing could be further than the truth. And I didn't see it that way, because you've got to accept it. It is what it is. I recognized I had to say, well, yeah, it happened. I need to wipe it off. I need to move past this. I am just grateful for my eyes. I'm thankful that I have my left arm, my left leg, and I've got to think differently. I have to think in a different way, and I have to work harder. But life is truly a gift we take for granted, and it is how we interpret the unfortunate and negative events in life that we sometimes experience that makes the difference. It's how we process it and say, right, how will I make the best of this? And I will have to take the pain. I was told I wouldn't run again by some people.
Yeah.
And genuinely, some people told me, you're just going to have to be thankful for what you can get. You might get a job, but at least you're alive. Well, no, I'm going to thrive. It is what it is. How do we make the best of it?
Crikey. And I guess part of that mindset, for people who've read your book, for people who've read what's available on the internet, yes, we can see the words that they gave you a sort of prognosis of recovery. And I don't know if you just decided this, but you smashed all the times that they said, we reckon it's going to be X, and you said, nah, It's going to be quicker than that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because I worked with those most wonderful nurses and doctors and healthcare professionals. And I listened and I learned, and I had a sense of humor. I think that's really important, not being the center of your own universe. Focus on the positive outcomes of your treatment. I was just so grateful to those amazing people for helping me to heal and who treated me. I have just much love and respect for nurses and doctors, because, they're people as well.
Yeah.
But I think it was focusing on the positive outcomes and having an element of ownership, taking ownership for everything. If we say, look, I'm going to take responsibility for this and everything that affects me in life, then that puts me in the driving seat.
Yeah. Big time. So, there are many people or some people in the world that have gone through things close to what you've gone through, or the situation that you found yourself in, and thought, and may have said, right, okay, I'm going to go on with some aspects of my life, but you decided that you were going to just, I'm a runner. I said, why can't I run anymore? Yeah. So you was it a year after?
Yeah, it was less than a year after leaving hospital that I did my first London Marathon, and I was told that someone like me couldn't do that then.
Yeah, you can't.
And you should leave it 4 years, and I realised that actually, with the best will in the world, for very good reasons, some people were imposing limitations, and from good motives to look after you, make sure you didn't hurt yourself. But actually, the biggest limits in life are not out here.
Yeah.
The biggest limits are what goes on in here. It's what goes on inside our heads that limits us. Mm-hmm. So yeah, back then, artificial legs, 1996, were nothing like as good as they are now. But I am pleased and proud to say I got around the London Marathon, and I had reasons much more important than me to do it. Yeah. And I thought I was doing really well until I got to the 11-mile point, when I was passed by the fattest man in the world dressed as a chicken. At which point I realized, don't be the center of your own universe. You know, there's a whole load of people out there. We've got to be able to laugh at ourselves.
Big time. There's another statement which I resonate with, because I'm not quite sure if you were first amputee and first Brit to do the Marathon Des Sables.
Well, I was told that I was the first amputee. Quite a few British people had done it, but right. I was told that I was the first amputee to complete it in 1996.
96.
Double amputee, because I had my hand off, so that counts as double apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a challenge, and I had to go in realistically saying, well, if I don't finish it this time, then what I'll do is I will learn how to do it next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough, and it used every ounce of effort that I had. But I'm pleased to say I got an artificial leg that I could do quite a lot of high activity stuff on. So I'm pleased to say I managed to finish it, and raised money for the British Red Cross, who did a fantastic job. And together we raised about, I think, well over 120,000 for artificial limbs in Asia. So it was a good first ultra.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a sentence or a phrase that's used in your a lovely, well, it's not a lovely video, it's a horrendous video to watch actually, which is a reconstruction on your website. And there's a phrase that rung true with me because I'm fascinated by this gap that I call it, this gap. The phrase that's used, and I guess it's your words. What happens, in fact, it is your words, it's on the piece to camera that you're doing. What happens most of the time is that we stop here at this point in which it's uncomfortable, where it all hurts a bit too much. But the reality is we have the capacity to go beyond that point if we believe that we can. Now that stopped me in my tracks because I too, we're Marathon De Sables brothers. I failed in 2013 very painfully and then went back in 2015 with the learning that you'd said you would do, but you managed to do it all in one go. So I had to fail to learn, to go back, to achieve. But that gap, and I realized then at this point in my life, and I am no specialist in this, I'm not an accomplished runner. I've done a lot of events, but I'm not an accomplished athlete or sports person. I just have my own views on this, none of which are backed up by any science. But that point by which your brain is saying, we need to stop. You need to stop. We're going to put chemicals out into your muscles to make you exhausted. We're going to make you want to sit down. We're going to make you want to get into a place with a cup of tea and biscuits and with either heat or air conditioning. We need to stop this because we're going to die. And if you actually just turn that voice off, how much more you have left in the tank. I'm fascinated by that gap. Fascinated by that.
I think that gap is there, definitely. And that is where mind control comes in. One of the things that's interesting these days is that gap, when you have run out of everything, now there is a danger that people can get, high caffeine, some steroid sort of sports drinks, and that makes them go beyond the point at which their bodies would cut out. Yeah. So I think these days that I have obviously never taken anything like that, but I am aware, I've heard stories of people who sadly have gone too far and really seriously hurt themselves or in some cases died. So I think I would flag up an element of danger in trying to bridge that gap chemically. Just stay hydrated. This is on real serious endurance stuff. Yeah. Particularly perhaps some of the stuff that the military does on selection courses, things like that. Don't go the chemical route because there is a danger there. But just stay hydrated. The mind space is the area that is mine. It is how we control our minds to go one step beyond the point at which we feel we can go no further. And we do that through finding our reasons. We do that through discipline. We do that through breaking it down into manageable steps. It's exactly the same principle as eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One forkful at a time. Chunk it. Don't look at this massive, scary, big thing that you've got to do. Break it down into manageable steps and chunk it.
This isn't about me, it's about you, but just a quick one on that. When I failed at the Marathon De Sables in 2013, I went there to get a medal. When I went back in 2015, I went section by section by section by section by section, and I had a strategy and a plan. And the plan was to deliver checkpoint to checkpoint with a plan in my mind. Yep. And as you say, bite-sized chunks. Bite-sized. Yep. I had a little rhythm. I changed my socks and dried my feet and tended to my feet at every checkpoint. I didn't do that in 2013. I just clattered on. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And of course, the thing I would say is, in 2013, you didn't fail. You learned how to do it. You didn't fail. You just learned how to do it next time. We've got a lousy attitude towards failure in this country. You just learn how to do it. By the way, allow me to ask you a question. Man with a hairstyle like you, what are you doing with a comb?
Yeah, okay, caught. One of my other guests on this show.
It doesn't really compute with me. I didn't mean to be rude, but I couldn't help. I had to ask.
How very dare you, Chris? How very dare you? It's my parting. It's for my parting. I tell you what it is. Those little Japanese Zen sandboxes that people have on their desks. So I sit like this and I comb my beard.
You could get a job as the evil mastermind in a James Bond film sitting there.
So, Mr. Bond.
Yes. Combing your beard.
I don't think it's not intimidating in any way, though. I don't think it's going to freak.
No, it isn't. But it catches the eye, and I'm sure it's also very, very good for getting bits of boiled egg out your beard.
Very good, very good. Yeah, tikka masala sauce up here. Yeah, the whole lot, Very good. Now you've completely thrown me. Now I have no idea where we were.
We were talking about challenging the concept of limitation.
So that one step beyond is a beautiful segue into. With all the experience that you've had, at what point did you find it fitting to, and what was the catalyst for the book?
Everyone said you should write this. You should write down your experiences. So I did. That's it. And yeah, it was a great thing to do. It's nice to have recorded it, and nice that my kids will be able to read it in later life. I'm very privileged to have had the experiences that I've had, and I realize that now, because look, we were the last era before sat-nav. We were the last few years before satellite technology came online, and there were mobile phones everywhere. But we were in the middle of nowhere with no communications except a UHF radio. And if your Land Rover broke down and you didn't fix it, you had no transport. So you had to work with people. So yes, it was a remarkable experience. The Halo Trust continues to do good work all around the world, clearing landmines, keeping people safe, and will be doing so for many years to come, but on a much bigger scale now, on 10 times the scale of the operation that I was running in say, Mozambique and Cambodia. And the good news is Mozambique is now clear of landmines.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So the ultra thing, now you're now a very accomplished ultra and respected ultra marathon runner, right? Again, I hate asking this question, but just for people who are interested, how many ultra events have you? Do you even count?
I have lost count. Hundreds, probably 100. I don't know. Lots.
Crikey. Tell me this, only because when I first met you the other day, I thought I've seen Chris before. Did you ever do the Mourne Way Ultra in Ireland? No,
I haven't done that. I've been in the Mournes when I was in Ireland. I used to regularly go and run there in Hill Walk, but
yeah, I haven't. That's a fabulous place.
Yeah, but now, of course, it's really interesting how this has changed in 20 years, because there are so many more ultra events than there used to be. It used to be thought that it was only a handful of people can do it, but now we know that if you train, anybody can do it. So you could do an ultra every day now in the UK, probably.
Yeah.
When things open up again.
Again, horrible question to ask someone who's done so many. Which one, if at all, which one do you think back to and thought that was a cracker? That was a beauty.
Okay, so Badwater in Death Valley, hottest place on earth, 135 miles, and the hottest place on earth has to be completed in under 48 hours. That is challenging.
Yeah.
Just because the heat, you start to cook. That's what it feels like. And you do it with your support crew. There are two races in the UK that for me are phenomenal. One of which is the West Highland Way Race, 95 miles. Got to complete it in under 35 hours. I've done that twice. There's a couple of times when I didn't do that. One was because it had been very dry that year and all the paths were like concrete. And I had literally, my artificial leg fell apart.
Oh, okay.
And I put my spare on, and then that fell apart. I literally broke 2 carbon fiber legs doing it. And of course, I was testing legs then, but so they then rearranged the design and the way they were working to make them stronger, so that didn't happen again. So I guess you could say that in terms of testing, that was a success.
Yeah.
The other race that is extraordinary is the 117-mile Devon coast to coast. So you start on the south coast of Devon, you go over Dartmoor and Exmoor, you finish in Lynmouth, and that is 117 miles in under 40 hours. That's a tough gig.
I'm just writing some of these down because some of my friends, I'm going to make sure that some of my friends watch this that are right into this kind of, they maybe know about them already, but that's just fabulous. But you've been quoted as saying that you don't intend anytime soon to give up this ultra malarkey.
Not at all. Quite often the biggest limits in life are imposed by our thinking. And I want to run ultra distance in my 70s and 80s if I can. So I hope to keep running for the next 30 years until I can't run anymore. And, in the short term, you might not do a few races or you'll come back off your times. But I don't want to run faster than anybody else. I just want to run faster than myself.
Yeah. That's a great. I do wear I don't do any significant distance, but I do wear a smartwatch, but it's just for myself. Don't really mind if I'm beating anyone or beating any segments or setting any records. I never will anyway. So with what you're doing on resilience and well-being and performance and all of that, with everything that either businesses or individuals, teams or individuals have been through this year, it's been a horrible old time for everyone. What would your advice be to people who are feeling a little bit downtrodden, not so sure about the future, worried about this, that, and the next thing? Just a couple of things that people could maybe grab onto, a couple of sticks for people to grab onto.
Firstly, most of us have had a tough time. The first thing to realize is, look, getting through this is enough. Take the pressure off. Don't feel you have to do all these things, this, that, and the other. Getting through this is enough. And take the pressure off. Do what you can to take the pressure off. Next, realize that actually, yeah, it's okay not to be okay. But here is where my philosophy is different, because it is not okay to not do something about it. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to feel okay. Sure, we all have those feelings. Negative emotions are like weeds. They're always going to germinate. Weed seeds will always germinate in any bit of ground that is dug. We're always going to get them. So it's okay not to be okay. Yeah, sure, but it's not okay to not do something about it. Ask for help.
Yep.
Do things that will make you feel better. Be disciplined. Go for a walk. Do things that will give you some have-tos. We need to find our own reasons for getting up in the morning. Don't just sit there. Get out and get some exercise. If you're able to run. You'll be fine walking if you're not a runner, or do some sort of exercise. Do something that gets you moving. Make the effort not to be isolated. Phone people, reach out to people, go for a walk. And when you go out, smile. It is so important to smile, Eric. Come on, give us your best smile.
That was it. It's behind this.
Come on, let's have a look. Come on, give us your best smile. Eric, it is so important to smile, but not in a creepy way.
I only have creepy smile.
Seriously, you have a lovely smile. But
Thank you.
Make the effort to smile. Make the effort to find things that make you laugh, and ask for help if you need it.
Yeah.
And keep on keeping on. Don't give up. Recognize this is tough for everyone. And sometimes the people, I think early on in lockdown, I was listening to a few radio presenters, and I did feel that they weren't being entirely honest about the way they felt. I suspected that many of them went home and got a large glass of gin and cried in the corner. Yeah. But the reality is, each of us must find our own way to recharge our psychological batteries. And that's what I would say. Phone a friend, stroke the cat, go for a walk with a dog, take pleasure in simple things. The joy of seeing spring flowers emerge. It costs us nothing. Take pleasure in simple things.
One of the things I've been really chuffed to see, because Sarah and I did this a few years ago, was offload crap. We got onto a bit of a hamster wheel of, it's all about things and stuff. We got rid of all the stuff, got rid of it all, and just went back to a simple lifestyle that was far more healthy, off the sort of rat race of trying to keep up with the Joneses and all of that, which is very easy to slip into.
Yep.
And just got back to a simple, meaningful life with a few nice things. It doesn't have to be a lot of nice things. A few things that mean things to us, but not just the endless pursuit of stuff.
No. And of course, it's really important to realize it is not having things that makes us happy. That's only very short-lived. It is doing things that makes us happy.
Totally. Totally. I think that's probably a fitting point to draw this to a close. What's next for you? What's as we're coming out of lockdown, as we're clearing our heads a little bit, as we're coming out like little newborn voles out of the darkness? What's next? What do you see happening in 21? Any thoughts for yourself or anything that you've got?
Well, as we're coming out of the darkness, for me, it's important to make 2021 about stepping into the light. Yep. I've booked into the first ultra that was cancelled last year. So I'm really hoping that, and it looks like the restrictions have been lifted, so I can travel to do the coast to coast. So that's a really big one for me.
So that's Devon?
Yeah, I got loads of people that I'm connecting with work-wise and helping them to improve their individual and team performance. That I find mega exciting. I love working with people. And I'm hoping that towards the end of the year, live events will come back and we can be together again.
Outstanding. So we'll put all the contacts for you on this, and if anybody, I guess you're not adverse to a call. You were very amenable to this one, which is lovely. If anyone wants to get in touch with you,
just put them in touch, Eric. I'd love to chat to anyone. It's really great, and you are such a wonderful person. It is not true what Alan Dowie says about you.
Brilliant. Well, I say the same about him, so it all balances out. It's all about balance, isn't it?
Yeah, difference is you're right, obviously.
Fantastic. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to
keep in touch, Eric, and let me know what you do business-wise. If there's any introductions, we'll have a chat every few weeks now. It'd be lovely to see what you're doing. And
likewise.
Touch, buddy.
Thank you so much. We will see you soon.